The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
As promised, we are back in the state of Florida for this episode of the Florida Podcast Network, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. I know I have teased the city that we're going to be in. I'm going to make you wait a little bit more before I tell you the city, which you've probably already figured out by reading the show notes. But you know something? I'm just going to go ahead and do this audio the way that I want to anyways. So, before we get started, make sure to follow us on social media at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter. We're at FL Beer Blog on Facebook. Our podcasting network is the Florida Podcast Network. You can follow them on Instagram at FL Podcast Net. Recommend that you do all of the above and then some, and then go to our website. We're at FloridaPodcastNetwork.com. Our individual page is FloridaBeerPodcast.com, and I also recommend that you go to the FloridaBeerBlog.com, which is where all of this originated, and I'm still publishing articles there as well. If you have a beer that you want to send to me to see on FloridaBeerBlog.com, you know something, I will let you send me that beer, because I am not too proud to beg. I'll do a little TLC there, you know. So today we are heading to Bonita Springs. Well, Dave, where is Bonita Springs? Well, I will tell you. If you can think of Florida, I'm going to assume that you all know where Tampa is. It's on the Gulf Coast, halfway down. You all know the Tampa-St. Pete area. South of that, Sarasota-Bradenton. South of that, Fort Myers. South of that is Naples. But you go north of Naples, south of Fort Myers, that's where Bonita Springs is. It's in Lee County, so it shares the same county with Fort Myers. It is not a part of Naples, as I was told very pointedly. Never go to Bonita Springs and say that they're Naples, because it is two completely different worlds. Let me tell you something. And it is home to 3 different breweries. The first brewery, the original brewery that was in Bonita Springs, was a brewery by the name of Momentum. Momentum Brewhouse did have an original brewery that was on Bonita Beach Road. I was able to interview the owner and co-founder when they moved into their awesome new facility that was just off Interstate 75. If you listen to that episode, that is great. Momentum has since moved on to the great tap room in the sky, but that gorgeous facility that they built on 75 is now the Bonita Springs location of Riverside Brewing. And I spoke with Kim West, their current owner, not only at their original Naples location, but also after they took over the Bonita Springs location. So that's the first, and probably in terms of size, the biggest brewery that's in Bonita Springs. But if you kind of go into the heart of Bonita Springs and on old US 41, you basically have 2 other breweries. They're still relatively new, opened in November of 2021. One of them is a brand new construction facility, and the other one is in a building that harkens back to the 50s, and that's where we're going to be starting today. That brewery is Ceremony Brewing, and their owner, local Zach Smith, took a building that had a very tall history and a very short structure and built an absolutely fantastic system where he's got some amazing beers that he is producing, and also a bottle shop that I was frankly blown away by. And I spent a good chunk of change grabbing some stuff to take home, because some of those breweries I've always wanted to write about on FloridaBeerBlog.com, but I've never been able to because I never got my hands on them. But he had it all. Now, obviously, if I'm in Bonita Springs, I want to make sure to get the local flavor. So I actually invited a special co-host for today's and next week's episodes. And that co-host is Joel Lounds. He is the creator of Florida Man News, the newest show on the Florida Podcast Network. If you're not listening to Florida Man News, obviously finish this episode first and then go ahead and download everything that he's released. It is absolutely fantastic. It makes my heart smile to hear what he's producing and then cry a little bit because that's who I have to share a state with. But Joel was gracious enough to spend a little time on Father's Day, believe it or not, coming out with me and my lovely family because I adore my wife and child because they're just amazing human beings. And we were able to do the interview that you're about to listen to. So kick back with a beer. Doesn't matter where it's from, but hopefully it's from the state of Florida, and hopefully it's from Bonita Springs because there's just some great stuff there. And listen to this really great interview with Zach Smith from Ceremony Brewing. Enjoy. I'm not totally sure who this first question is for. I guess it's not so much a question as much as it is a locale setting observation. But on our way here in the subdivision housing area that is behind you, we did go by a house that had a couple empty cases of Natty Light, and the cans were strewn about the backyard. Using that as a setting, why did you feel that an area that is like that? I would assume, Joel, that this is a pretty good descriptor of most of Bonita Springs.
No, it's. I think it's really this one little area of Bonita. The more, if you're closer to the beach, it's a lot more hoity-toity. If you're closer to the interstate, it really depends on what area of town you're in.
Okay.
There's some really nice parts of Bonita, and then there's some kind of older.
Gotcha.
Places.
And so I guess, why is this the home of Ceremony Brewing? Why did you decide on this?
We'll do a little history lesson here and kind of answer your question. So as Joel just referenced, when you get out towards the beach, it's, tons of mansions and a lot of money out there and you're closer to the water. But a little bit further inland, just a couple miles, not far, but a little bit inland, you come to this little stretch, and this is Old 41. Before US 41 was rerouted, this used to be the main drag. And back then, it was actually known as a little town called Survey. And it was historically it was a little fishing camp, but then as the years went on, it became more of a lower socioeconomic kind of migrant community. A lot of these buildings were built in the 50s and 60s, and then it was long kind of forgotten by Lee County, and then it was incorporated. And then in the past about 10 years, the city has been really trying to put some money back into this neighborhood and revitalize it. They started by putting in a new road, which was desperately needed. And then shortly thereafter, we started to get a couple new apartment complexes and a couple new business interests and things like that. And, I bought my house here about 10 years ago. And, as you can see, I drove a golf cart in today. So I live right here in the neighborhood. So I've always loved this neighborhood. I saw the potential. I saw the authenticity of it. I liked the local community, being a little bit more diverse. The greatest tacos you'll find in Southwest Florida are all right here in Bonita.
Really?
Yeah, the culture here is awesome. So I just want to keep it here in Bonita. Everybody was turning their eyes to, South Naples, downtown Fort Myers, towards the beach. And I thought we had a really excellent community right here. So why go anywhere else?
Did you get a lot of pushback? A lot of, yes, we'll support you, but
So I think there was a lot of support from the community. The city needed a little bit of convincing. I think the issue was they knew they wanted to do something down here, but they didn't know what they wanted to do. And so when new businesses were approaching them, they were apprehensive, especially when it came to converting old buildings like mine. My building was built in the 60s and the building right in front there was built in the 50s. And they didn't really know what to do with these. I think they kind of hoped that a large developer would just come and bulldoze them and build some big, giant new thing. And so when people like myself, some other business owners on the Strip were trying to convert these older buildings, they didn't quite know how to approach it. And it's interesting to note that they didn't even have record of a lot of these buildings because these buildings predated the city being incorporated.
Interesting.
So the records were all lost. So, not having plumbing and electrical records and, certain things, I think they just wanted to see them bulldozed. But, resilient people like myself came in and said, no, we're gonna give this old building a new life.
Interesting. What did this building used to be? Because it's definitely, I guess its most defining characteristic is how low to the ground it is. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the brew system later. But
so I always say, what hasn't it been? I've actually met a guy who he came in, he said he grew up here. And I believe him because he was like, oh yeah, I had a tree fort out in the tree out back. And when I was putting this place up, I had to tear out the remnants of an old tree fort out back. So
interesting.
He knew it was there. But so it used to be, I think in its earliest form, it was like I say pawn shop, like loosely. It was kind of just like a kind of a buy sell trade with some new stuff. I mean, keep in mind, this was a very small community. So a lot of businesses would kind of service multiple roles. So that's what it originally started out as. And then from there, I heard it was a church at one point. I know it was a used mattress store, which doesn't that sound delightful?
That's actually
I got it. There's like a demolition company around here that when they demo, they will resell some of the stuff they take out. Okay. So they were using this as just like storage. So when I came in, I mean, it was just packed to the brim, floor to ceiling. Every square inch was packed with like old cabinets and cupboards and build-ins and things like that.
Anything usable?
Nothing.
So,
when I came in, I was like, great, this building's got electrical, it's got plumbing, it's a block building. So, okay, it all looks pretty good. Well, come to find out, like I said, it wasn't on record. The plumbing was brought in illegally. It was just like a PVC pipe, like 3 inches under the ground. The electrical was insufficient, so I had to bring in all new electrical. So ultimately, I had the dirt and 4 walls. I had to rip off the entire ceiling, everything, bare sky, put in new support columns by cutting in new footers. I had a floor cut, all the plumbing, everything.
I was going to say at that point, wouldn't it almost make more sense to go ahead and demolish everything and rebuild?
It became one of those, it was like Pandora's box. Like at the beginning, we thought we'd be okay. But then as we realized, okay, well, now the plumbing's no good, we got to redo that. And now the roof is no good, we got to redo that. Yeah, in hindsight, it probably would have been, but it would have lost all of its character.
Okay.
And so it's cool to keep it like the way it is and not have some fresh, brand new building. We learned a lot of sweat equity went into it. So now there's a certain level of pride with the building, which is pretty cool.
And I would love to talk about that character, for example. And as you see Bonita Springs starting to, I hate to say gentrify or redevelop, so I guess we'll use those words. Joel, have you started to really see that take off? Is it getting a little bit cleaner? Is it getting away from the traditional stereotypes that the city had?
It definitely has, especially along this old 41 corridor, has really redeveloped in the last decade. But I think they're trying to keep the charm of old Florida. As we drive north up the street later, you'll see a lot of the old style buildings. They've kept that old Florida look to them, and I think that's really part of the charm of the downtown Bonita Springs area.
And do you have a lot of discussion with the businesses that are in this area, making sure that old Florida charm is maintained and what you can do to help support it?
Yeah, I think amongst the fellow business owners and the community, I think everybody wants to try their best, or at least hope that it stays local. I don't think anybody wants to see like big box stores come in or franchises come in. There is a lot of these old buildings on property, and I think people want to see those revitalized. And then with the vacant properties, like there's a large lot to the north that everybody knows is going to be converted it's a very large project. I mean, multi-million, it's like a 5-acre lot, it's a huge one. So I think everybody knows it's kind of a give and take, like you're going to get some bigger concepts and, some new development, things like that going in there. But for the older stuff, for the smaller properties, they want to keep them small, keep them local, keep them kind of uniquely Bonita. So I think everyone in the community is kind of on the same page and has the same vision for downtown Bonita, which is really cool.
And what has it been like talking to the city? Because especially if you take a look at some other cities to the north, I can list off several like Lake City, and I know Tavares is interested in this. When they go to revitalize a downtown area, a municipal area, one of the first people that they look at is a brewery, because it's not just an alcohol manufacturing facility, which obviously it is, but it ends up being a community hub in the center. Did they understand that going in, since this is technically not the first brewery that Bonita Springs has ever had?
They did not. And it was so we had one brewery in Bonita prior to me, and they didn't understand it at all. So they kind of just let that brewery get away with anything. I mean, not to say that they were trying to get away with anything bad, but like they didn't know what they know now. So now as breweries are coming in, they're a little bit more cognizant of like, what's it doing to the electrical demand? The water company is very specific about how we do things that they weren't with the first time because they didn't realize what the water usage was and the wastewater. So they're starting to learn and come around. Now there's 3 of us in the city. So they're learning. But I was fortunate because, as I mentioned, I was very adamant about being in this downtown corridor. And as we all know, that breweries with the manufacturing aspect tend to be kind of tucked away in these industrial zones.
You mentioned Palm City. It was the first time that I took my wife there. She laughed because, here we are, another industrial park.
I mean, it's especially in Florida where everything I feel is so new. The way that they zone these things is, you're out in the industrial park, by the airport or something, not like these older metropolitan cities where, you could have manufacturing like right downtown or something. But I was very fortunate because this weird little like block that we're on, the city had zoned as a special district because they did not know what to do with these buildings. Right behind me here used to be a very large tomato packing plant. It was a Garjulio. It was huge. And so they have these huge warehouses that didn't have parking, didn't have a lot of the infrastructure that they needed. So the city had no idea what to do with them. And so they didn't want to hinder future development by zoning it any one particular way. So when I came in and said, I want to do a brewery, would you allow me? They said, fantastic. Like someone's going to do something with one of those buildings in this special zone. So I was super fortunate with that because they basically opened the door for me to do it.
Awesome. So we've got the location and then there's the name, Ceremony Brewing, because you've got the name. It's very prominent, almost Eye of Sauron torch logo that my beautiful wife and daughter are sitting underneath. Hi. I guess my 2 questions are, where did that come from? And since you are so heavily involved and interested in the community, why not focus on being a Bonita Springs centered forward brewery?
Like Bonita Springs Brewing?
Exactly. Or something that celebrates the history.
I don't know. I find that very vanilla, very boring, not much creativity there. It wasn't taken. I could have used it, but I don't know. To me, Ceremony it's kind of a long-winded explanation, so I try to boil it down as quickly as I can. But
we've got nothing but time.
To me, when you think about brewing, it's almost this like ritualistic experience. And then sharing those drinks and celebrating, toasting. To me, there's just this ritual involved. And to me, it's a ceremony. It's a cause for celebration. So that's just where that came from. There's almost this, I hate to use the word, but like spiritual or like holy, aspect to brewing.
Well, so isn't that how it really started?
Right. Right. So that's where the name Ceremony came from.
Awesome. So I was actually going to, same question for both of you. I was going to go ahead and start with you, Joel, first, is because you're not the first brewery in Bonita Springs, because we started with Momentum, which is now gone, but become the new Bonita home of Riptide. Did that help out when it came to introducing the city to craft beer? Did the palates come a little bit more sophisticated than if you had just plopped down in the middle of nowhere? What have you seen so far, first of all?
Me personally, honestly, from my point of view, it more started towards the north to the Fort Myers area and all the Fort Myers Brewing, Millennium, all the other brewers up there. And it's great that I don't have to drive half an hour to get to them now. But yeah, I think Momentum was a great start to getting craft beer here in Bonita. And I think it's just started with 1, now there's 3. And that, as a consumer, that's awesome.
I think
I have choices now.
I think Southwest Florida, not just in beer, but in almost every aspect, is a solid 10 years behind a lot of things. And that obviously translates into beer as well. So Momentum, Brian is a good friend, tremendous resource. And I do think it helped because I see a lot of those same customers. And I don't know, had they not been here, if those customers would have as quickly come to me. I think having Momentum there kind of like conditioned these people to, hey, we like breweries. And so then when I opened up, there wasn't a thought process or, I need to go test this out. It was, we like breweries. We're now going to go to Ceremony. So I think he kind of, wetted their feet a little bit and made the community a little bit more open to it. Not to say that if he never existed, and let's just pretend I was the first, I'm sure they would have found their way in, but maybe it would have been a slower process. You know what I mean? So now they knew they liked breweries, and Momentum was right around the corner. So, I mean, we're kind of in the same neighborhood. So we see a lot of those, and I would go there a lot too. And so see a lot of the same faces. So I definitely think it helped.
How much did the city kind of define what you were going to brew? Because you've been open for 6 months, and how many beers have you already had grace your tap list?
We're a week short of 7 months now.
Okay.
We opened on Black Friday. So we're pushing like 65, 70 different brews that we've put on. So we have a very different philosophy in a lot of regards. And starting with that one, we're a small batch system. We love to explore and experiment. I don't ever feel like you could possibly know everything. There's so many hop varietals, so many yeast, there's so many different grains. I mean, there's endless combinations. So why get stuck brewing the same 10 day in and day out and trying to keep up with that demand and the stress of, I got to free up a tank because I got to brew that same IPA again. So we keep it fresh. We're always trying new recipes, new ingredients. If we get a crazy idea, there's no harm in trying it. We see what works and doesn't work.
And it's funny, I've seen that attitude shared with a lot of other breweries that just have a small system. And it seems to be that they are more open to experimentation, open to playing around and just seeing if something works or not.
Right. I always tell people I left my career and got into this because I wanted to have fun and enjoy what I'm doing. And to me, it just doesn't sound enjoyable to put that added stress on yourself. I had a conversation with a customer today. They were begging me for this beer to come back, which it's in the fermenter. It's coming back. We've had enough requests for it. But she followed that up with, well, why don't you just brew that all the time? Why isn't it constantly on the menu? And I said, if we did that, you wouldn't even have this beer. That was a beer that we just said, screw it. Let's try doing this. So I think it allows us to better ourselves. We're finding better procedures, better methods, better ingredients. So I think it just makes us a better brewery by doing that.
What kind of beer was it?
She's been begging for our marshmallow IPA to come back, it started off as just like a shtick for St. Patrick's Day. We ordered a 50-pound bag of Lucky Charms marshmallows and just threw them in the boil.
Did they disintegrate on impact?
Totally. Completely disintegrated. We were just like excited about doing it. We didn't quite think about it until like the first handful went in that, oh wait, we have like blue rainbows and green clovers and all these things, like, oh, mix all those colors together, what do you get? So
brown.
At first the color wasn't great and we were a little stressed about that, but after cold crashing and dry hopping, it actually came out to like a perfectly normal hazy color, which is great, and the flavor was killer. And now we have people begging for it, so we're bringing back the marshmallow IPA.
Nice. So in terms of the standard tap list, what you have available, and obviously I've got an absolutely ambrosial New England IPA, whereas Joel, you have just finished your Pilsner. How much of this was you and your brew team? How much of this is what Bonita Springs would want anyways? Like where's the happy medium between those two?
So I guess I should say the one caveat to us constantly changing our recipes and our beers, we do try to keep the styles always on. So we always try to keep a stout, a sour, an IPA, something light. So we always try to keep like those styles on. It just may not be the same one every time. Obviously, IPAs sell, so we have to keep hop forward things on pretty regularly. We try to keep a couple options for that. We've found for us that our fruited sours are huge. People love the fruited sours. So we move a lot of those, which makes me happy because that's a style that I'm really partial to.
We've both been eyeing that lactose key lime sour.
Yeah, the key lime pie is good. Yeah, and usually we have multiple on, but the last batch went through so fast that we're down to just the one sour right now. Usually we have like 2 or 3 sours on. But to answer the question of what does Bonita look for, we've found there's kind of like 2 groups. So we get the group that is really into like the fruited sours and things like that. They tend to also be like your IPA drinkers. And then the other group is very much into almost like the macros domestic styles. Like they're looking for ambers, they're looking for pilsners. And so we move a lot of those too. So we're constantly having to get our pilsners, our lagers on, and we try to keep some sort of like amber or red or something on because those just fly for us as well. We got a really great brown on right now that's been moving very quickly.
Awesome. And I think this is a great time to talk about the system because, as we mentioned before, with the space constraints, not just around, but up, being maybe 7 feet tall?
Yeah, it's got a slight pitch to it, but I can definitely touch the ceiling.
Yeah.
I should mention I'm very tall, though. So.
You're a little bit taller than me, which I hate you for. How difficult is it to get the equipment that you need into a space like this to satisfy the demand that it looks like you are getting?
Yeah, so it's pretty challenging. Fortunately, right now with the we're running a 3.5 barrel brew house, so right now it's fine. It's a little difficult trying to dry hop or sometimes mashing in and reaching up that high. The biggest concern right now for that is moving into the future. I'd love to get a 7 or something right now so I can double batch, but we're going to be cutting it real close. I'm going to have to really talk to manufacturers and either try to find a squatty or maybe get something custom fabbed that will fit our low ceilings, maybe look at some horizontals, but it's definitely going to be an issue in the future. But even smaller things, like you'll notice we have to air condition the building with mini splits because the ceiling is so low, we couldn't fit ductwork in. So it does have its own unique hurdles, but nothing that, little creative engineering can't figure out.
That's funny. I never really noticed that.
And the cool thing about it is, we can have a whole conversation about the design, the aesthetic, the kind of culture we're going for. But talking about the ceiling, one of the comments I got very early on was someone's like, man, this place feels like you're drinking in your buddy's basement. And that has always stuck with me. And I love it. I feel like it's a good way that kind of encapsulates like the feeling in here.
We're in Florida. What's a basement?
We got a lot of Northerners.
Oh, that's amazing. And obviously one of the other things that you have an issue with, well, not an issue with, I would ask, how often do you get the question of distribution? When's your beer going to be available in cans? When your beer going to be available in the stores that are
all the time? Yeah, and I got some good buddies that work for the distribution companies and things like that. Not even people that I necessarily work with for ordering, but just buddies that I've known forever that ended up in those career paths. And hey, come on, man! But the answer is no desire. As much as I'd love to, I got some buddies that own bars, restaurants, this and that. And I'd love to send my product to them, and it would be cool to just walk in somewhere and see my beer on tap. Of course, it's a very satisfying feeling. But you sell your soul in that deal.
I was going to say, do you think that especially the new group of breweries, the people that have opened in the past year, like you and many, many, many others, that the desire to distribute has sort of swung back into the no, not interested phase?
So again, I feel like there's two camps on that, right? And there's 2 avenues to make money as a brewery. One is the tap room concept, and the other is distribution. Not to say that you can't be successful in both, because you absolutely can be, but they each have their own unique hurdles and avenues. So I think it just kind of depends on the approach you want to take. I have seen breweries that come right out the gate and say full on, we are going all in for distribution. They do a very small tap room, huge production facility, semi bays, and, they're ready to go. And then you have people like me that, open a tiny little building that has no parking and, and just have no interest in getting into that distribution. I think it just ties right back into the tap list. If I get into distribution, it's the same thing. I got to have those core brands. I got to be producing those same beers. And I just don't want to be doing that. I don't want to brew the same recipe every day.
That makes perfect sense, obviously. How has the community response been? And actually, I should probably ask you that question first, because you've been by here many a time.
Yeah. How does the community feel?
Well, honestly, I drive past on 41 just about every day, and I don't think I've ever seen a time when the parking lot hasn't been full. So if parking, I know you said you don't have a lot of parking, but if that's any indicator, then it says that, you've got a lot of fans out here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope, right?
Yeah, we've got a couple coming up here. You're not open yet.
Are
you
close,
open?
I don't know. What time is it?
Oh, you open in 5 minutes.
There we go.
So, there we go. Oh,
you're ready.
And welcome. Hi, how you doing? I'm just going to wave at you. How you doing? Yeah, absolutely. Listen to the Florida Beer Podcast on the Florida Podcast Network. Thank you. Bye. How's the community response been? That's our question.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to answer it myself. I hope it's been good. I think it's been good. We've got a lot of regulars, which I think is a really encouraging sign. I mean, we had regulars our first month, which was fantastic to see, people coming back, 2-3 times a week for a place that was brand new. That's encouraging to see that, you must be doing something. I think the community response has been great. And I was honestly a little apprehensive. So I'm going to move this conversation in a different direction. I was a little worried about the community response because when I built this place as a reflection of myself. Like I said, if I was going to leave my career and put everything I got into a brewery, I wanted it to be a place that I thought was authentically me, that I would be comfortable spending every day in, that I thought, satisfied my itch to bring a little bit of a different culture or aesthetic to Southwest Florida. And I thought that might have been a gamble. I wasn't sure. So, the punk rock, the metal, the black walls, the unusual art.
I was going to say, if this is an extension of you and every single wall is black, what does this say? But
the beer names, let's be honest, we're in a little bit of an older retiree kind of community. The younger population is here, but that's not what Southwest Florida is known for. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of businesses kind of placate to that market. And I'm a native. I was born and raised in this town.
Nice.
And so I said, I want to create something that I feel like I wanted to hang out in. I do want to, like a place that I would want to hang out in. So that's the vibe I created. And I love it. I'm happy here. It looks a lot like my house. So I feel very comfortable. And I thought, okay, I immediately thought the first bad review we get is going to be about the music that we play. 100%. I'm like, I'm counting down the days. To this day, I have not gotten one. In fact, it's amazing how many people you wouldn't even expect are like, oh man, are you playing so-and-so? Is it this song? And people know it. People like it. I think even if it's not their scene, I think people respect the uniqueness. I think real recognizes real. I think people just dig it for being something a little bit different and not being, the same vibe that you see in every bar and restaurant and brewery in town. Just went for something a little different, and it seems to be working. And so I think the community response to it is very accepting, which is very encouraging.
Nice. You mentioned the beer names. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and touch on the beer names just a little bit, because I know that is a difficult avenue for most breweries to have. And not only do you have beer names, they almost seem hand-plucked from H.P. Lovecraft or something. They're very dark literary, shall we say.
So it was a funny conversation. My, we were talking production. There's two of us. There's my brewer, Ryan, and myself. And when we were first getting started, he was like, hey, man, start thinking about names because that's the hardest part. And I said, don't you worry. I pulled out my phone and I'm a list taker. So I have this massive list of beer names that I've been collecting over the years. I mean, I'm still pulling from that list, and there's a lot more to go. And now he and I, we both contribute to it. But
I mean, the beer list looks like a track list from the hidden Iron Maiden album.
Yeah. So actually, one of the beer names is a Black Sabbath song right now, but a lot of them do come from music. A lot of them come from literature. I'm big into the Witcher series. So there's a lot of cool Norris and, mythological type names. So yeah, we just try to keep them dark. I have a very firm no pun rule. I know a lot of breweries love it.
I salute you.
Yep. I know a lot of breweries love it, and it is tempting, and there are some good ones, and we often think of them just for the fun of it, but then say, okay, we're not using it. No puns, no funny names, no lightheartedness. We try to keep it just kind of dark and metal.
Nice. So those beers, you have a huge tap lineup. You've got about 18 taps. 10 of them are yours.
11 right now.
11 of them are yours. 7 of them are guest taps. But you also have a bottle shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, frankly, not going to lie, I was a little surprised on how good your bottle shop is.
Well, I'm glad you were surprised.
There's some amazing stuff in there. I just don't get paid enough to do what I'm about to do to it later on. I guess the first stop is, why decide to even do a bottle shop?
So, I mean, we all love beer, right? And there is no way in hell my 11 taps can showcase all that beer is or can be. I mean, the diversity in beer is unprecedented. And so I want to be able to show off all that beer can possibly be. And that means I got to bring in other people. I mean, I'm not doing, aged lambics. I mean? I got to show those off by the greats that are doing it. It's like my own personal beer cellar. It's fantastic when I can see, some homies, releasing beers, and I say, hey man, I got you. It's in the bottle shop. We're moving your product. I'm texting them, hey dude, we sold a whole case this weekend. I love being able to do that to support friends in the industry. I love showing off those beers. I I drink all of our beer throughout the production process. So usually when I'm here, I'm drinking from the bottle shop. I'm excited to get in there and try some other stuff that, friends have made. And it's kind of cool too, because sometimes we'll be creating a recipe and then I'll look at my list and say, oh, look, so-and-so released a beer of a similar style, little R&D. Let's try theirs and see how it goes. I think the public has had a really great response to it too. You asked earlier, is there this...
Yeah, is there kind of a push? Wouldn't you want people to drink your beers, the beers that will go bad much quicker than the beers that you have here? Wouldn't you want that money to come straight to you instead of having to split it with the distributor and obviously the brewery themselves? Right. Why you would think that there would be a real reason against selling other people's beers at your brewery.
Sure. So I totally understand that thought process, but I would actually argue the opposite. So what happens is people are coming in first and foremost to drink my beer. I mean, that's what the numbers are telling me, right? The sales of my draft beer far outweigh any other category. But what we are seeing is people, as they're wrapping up, or if they try a style from me that they like, then I can then say, well, hey, if you like this style, or hey, you're heading home, check out these options in the bottle shop, or maybe they've already started looking. So they're grabbing those items and they're taking them home with them. Everything in the bottle shop is available for consumption on site or to take home. And you can break, mix cases, whatever. So we're seeing a lot of sales that people are kind of taking with them at the end. I am not really in a position where I'm canning right now. We're doing small canning releases, but it's very limited.
I was going to say, I can see the Crowler machine behind you.
Yeah. So, I don't have a full lineup of canned products yet. I mean, that's kind of the next benchmark we're trying to get to. But when we do can releases, they fly. So I don't see it as competition. Again, I see it as, supporting other great breweries in the industry and just showing off great products. I think it's just something that it's a really great conversation piece to have with people. It's a good education piece because we can talk about these weird styles and flavors. And again, if I don't have it, I can say, but I have it in the bottle shop. Take this with you, check it out. I think you'll like this, sour IPA, or, you're questioning the difference between wilds and kettle sours. We'll take one of each and, see the difference. So it's just been really fun. On Thursdays, we do our bottle shop Thursday. So we waive the corkage fee for people to drink them on site, which is most people who have bottle shops, or, they get that structure, the price to take it home versus the price to drink it here. Yeah. So we waive that on Thursdays and try to move those products, and we crack a couple and sample things out to the guests. And we have everything priced to match the big box stores. So it really just becomes a question of local or big box. But I should say that's only with the things that the big boxes can actually get.
Yeah, there's a number of things that you've got in that cooler right now that they can't.
Yeah, that the big stores can't or won't get. Yeah.
So since you've been here for almost 7 months, is it too early to start talking about what the future is going to hold? Or are you still just happy with where you are and getting your feet wet and your sea legs?
I don't know. I think as a business owner, are you ever satisfied? I mean, you always want more, right? So as I mentioned, the next big benchmark for us is getting that canning line, which again, with our small footprint, is going to require some creative engineering. After that, it's, adding a couple more fermenters to keep up with the demand and free up a little stress that we have with tank space. Beyond that, of course, I'd like to look into, expanding, but I think those are the two big benchmarks right now. Should be looking at those maybe within the next year, hopefully by next season or in next season. And then we'll move on to the next target.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm going to go take a look at some of those beers.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. As I've gotten the article for floridabeerblog.com kind of situated with my first beers that I tried at Ceremony Brewing, I did sort of mention, as I mentioned in the show notes, that you say the names of his beers and you may resurrect something that you don't want to resurrect. Let's go through the names of some of the things that were there when Joel and I visited. Behind the Wall of Sleep, Resurrection of the Worm Moon, Your Life is Not Your Own, Forbidden Ritual, there you go, Cinder and Smoke, The Fall of Man, and of course, Palm Rats, because that's probably the most Florida that you're going to get from him. Next week, we are going to be at the third of Bonita Springs breweries, another one that's been around about the same amount of time as Ceremony Brewing. Yes, Joel will be with me as well. If you want to find more information, the best place for you to go to is FloridaManNewsPodcast.com. or he is on Instagram at Florida Men Pod. That's MEN. So FloridaManNewsPodcast.com or Florida Men Pod, so you can hear more of Joel Lounds describe exactly who we have to live with here in the Sunshine State. As for us, make sure to follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at Florida Beer Blog on the first two, FL Beer Blog on the Facebook. FloridaBeerPodcast.com, FloridaBeerBlog.com, and FloridaPodcastNetwork.com are the best places for you to go for that additional information. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Picala. Executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Lagonier. We will be back next week. We've got another episode ready to go. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us, subscribe to us on the podcasting app of your choice, and give us a nice 5-star rating. We do appreciate all of your love and support. And we will be back at it next week. Thank you so much for listening. This is Dave, your host and author, and drink Florida Craft.